Sirens wailed through cold night air, painting brick walls in harsh red light. Officer Bradley Jenkins smiled, tightening cold steel handcuffs around slender wrists. He thought he caught another clueless civilian. Reality, however, prepared a brutal awakening. This mistaken arrest would soon destroy his entire career. An arrogant ego. The dashboard clock in the unmarked 2024 Mercedes-Benz GLE read 11:42 p.m. Special Agent Chloe Davies rolled her shoulders, trying to work out a persistent knot of tension that had settled at the base of her neck. She was exhausted. For the past 3 weeks, she had been buried deep in a multi-agency financial crimes task force, tracking a massive embezzlement ring laundering money through high-end suburban real estate. Tonight, she was simply driving back to her temporary rented townhouse in the affluent, quiet suburb of Oak Creek, Illinois. She wore a simple, gray hoodie, dark jeans, and running shoes. Her FBI credentials and service weapon were locked securely in a biometric safe welded beneath the driver's seat, a strict habit she maintained when off-duty and off-mission to avoid unnecessary complications. All she had in her hoodie pocket was her standard Illinois driver's license, a few credit cards, and her smartphone. 2 miles behind her, an Oak Creek Police Department cruiser idled in the shadows of a defunct strip mall. Inside sat Officer Bradley Jenkins, a 12-year veteran of the force, and his partner, a fresh-faced rookie named Timothy Collins. Bradley was a man whose reputation preceded him within the department, a reputation for being aggressive, deeply cynical, and notorious for heavily profiling drivers based on race and age. He drummed his thick fingers against the steering wheel, chewing on a matchstick, his eyes scanning the sparse late-night traffic. When Chloe's sleek, black SUV glided past their hiding spot, maintaining the exact speed limit of 35 miles per hour, Bradley's posture immediately stiffened. "Look at this," Bradley muttered, his eyes narrowing as he threw the cruiser into drive. Brand new Mercedes GLE, tinted windows, midnight in Oak Creek. Timothy blinked, looking up from the mobile data terminal. "It's not speeding, Brad. Plates look clean. Tags are current." "You have a lot to learn, Timmy," Bradley said, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. He pulled out onto the road, accelerating until he was riding mere feet from Chloe's rear bumper. "People who belong in this zip code don't drive around at midnight looking like they're casing the neighborhood. I saw the driver when she passed under the street lamp. Let's just say she doesn't fit the local demographic." Timothy felt a familiar, uncomfortable twist in his stomach. He had been riding with Bradley for 3 months, and he recognized the pattern. "Brad, we need a moving violation to pull her over." "Watch," Bradley replied, his tone chillingly confident. In the Mercedes, Chloe noticed the cruiser aggressively tailgating her. Her training immediately kicked in. She kept her hands precisely at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror. She deliberately slowed down slightly, ensuring she was well under the limit, and signaled well in advance to make a right turn onto Whispering Pines Drive, her street. As she executed the turn flawlessly, the cruiser's light bar erupted in a blinding flash of red and blue, accompanied by a short, aggressive burst of the siren. Chloe sighed, a deep, tired sound. She knew exactly what was happening. Pulling over to the shoulder, she turned off the engine, turned on the interior dome light, and rolled down her window, placing both hands flat and visible on the top of the steering wheel. Bradley strutted up to the driver's side window, his hand resting casually, but purposefully, on the butt of his sidearm. He shined his heavy Maglite flashlight directly into Chloe's eyes, blinding her temporarily. "License, registration, and proof of insurance," Bradley barked, making no effort to mask his hostility. "Good evening, officer," Chloe said, her voice remarkably steady and calm, betraying none of the annoyance she felt. She squinted against the harsh beam. "My license is in my left pocket. My registration is in the glove compartment. How would you like me to proceed?" "Don't get smart with me," Bradley snapped. "Just hand them over slowly. No sudden movements." Chloe slowly retrieved her driver's license from her hoodie, and handed it through the window. "Is there a reason I was pulled over, officer?" Bradley snatched the plastic card from her fingers, glancing at it before shining the light back into her face. "You drifted over the center line back on Elm Street. Suspicious driving. Whose car is this? Yours?" "It is a company vehicle, provided by my employer," Chloe replied accurately, though omitting the fact that her employer was the Federal Bureau of Investigation. She knew her rights perfectly. She also knew that identifying herself as an FBI agent to an aggressive, clearly prejudiced local cop in the middle of a dark street could either de-escalate the situation or violently escalate it. Given Bradley's hostile posturing, she chose to remain a civilian for the moment, observing his conduct. "A company car!" Bradley scoffed loudly, leaning closer to the window. He smelled like cheap, stale coffee and peppermint. What company hands out $100,000 SUVs to people who dress like they're loitering outside a gas station? "You sure this isn't stolen, Chloe?" He emphasized her first name disrespectfully. "The vehicle is not stolen," Chloe said, her voice dropping an octave, turning colder. "If you run the plates, you will see it is properly registered. I have not violated any traffic laws. If you are issuing a citation for this alleged lane drift, please do so. Otherwise, am I free to go?" Timothy, standing near the rear passenger door of the Mercedes, shifted uncomfortably. He hated this. The woman was perfectly compliant, calm, and articulate. Bradley was completely out of line. "You're free to go when I say you're free to go," Bradley growled, his face flushing red. He hated when citizens, especially minorities, knew their rights and refused to be intimidated. It felt like a direct challenge to his authority. "Step out of the vehicle." "On what legal grounds?" Chloe asked, not moving. "You have not articulated reasonable suspicion of a crime, nor do you have probable cause to order me out of the car for a simple, disputed traffic infraction." "I am giving you a lawful order," Bradley shouted, his voice echoing through the quiet, manicured neighborhood. "Step out of the car right now, or I will drag you out for resisting a police officer." Chloe calculated the variables in a fraction of a second. A physical altercation on the side of the road with a heavily armed, unstable officer was a losing proposition. She could legally refuse the search of the vehicle, but the Supreme Court case, Pennsylvania v. Mims, gave him the right to order her out of the vehicle during a traffic stop, even if the stop itself was questionable. She decided to let him dig his grave deeper. "I am complying," Chloe stated clearly, ensuring the cruiser's dashcam microphone would pick up her words. She opened the door with her left hand and stepped out slowly into the cool night air, keeping her hands visible. "Turn around. Face the car. Hands on the roof," Bradley commanded, kicking her feet apart slightly wider than necessary. "I do not consent to any searches of my person or my vehicle," Chloe stated loudly and firmly. "I'm patting you down for officer safety," Bradley retorted, his hands patting down her sides roughly. He found nothing but her smartphone, which he pulled out and tossed onto the hood of the Mercedes. He was furious. He had expected to find drugs, a weapon, or at least a nervous, stuttering suspect he could easily manipulate into a confession. Instead, he had a stone-cold woman who looked at him with an expression of clinical detachment, as if she were studying a rather unpleasant insect. "You have a lot of attitude, you know that?" Bradley sneered, leaning in close to her ear. "You think because you're driving a nice car in a rich neighborhood, you're untouchable? I know your type. You're hiding something. Maybe moving cash? Maybe running drugs for a boyfriend?" Chloe didn't flinch. She just stared at her reflection in the dark-tinted window of the SUV. "Are you detaining me, officer?" "Oh, I'm doing more than detaining you," Bradley snapped, completely losing his temper. He grabbed her left wrist and wrenched it behind her back. "You're under arrest." Timothy stepped forward, alarmed. "Brad, wait. What are the charges?" "Interfering with a police investigation, disorderly conduct, and failure to comply," Bradley listed off. Pulling his handcuffs from his belt, he snapped the cold steel around Chloe's wrists, intentionally ratcheting them tight enough to pinch the skin. Chloe winced slightly, but maintained her composure. You are making a false arrest, officer. You have no probable cause. I strongly advise you to speak with your supervisor before you proceed. I don't need advice from a criminal, Bradley laughed. A harsh, grating sound. He grabbed her by the bicep and began to frog march her toward the cruiser. By now, the commotion had drawn attention. Porch lights flicked on down. Whispering Pines Drive. Curtains twitched. A few residents stepped out onto their manicured lawns, clutching robes around themselves, watching the spectacle. Bradley noticed the audience and puffed out his chest. He deliberately marched Chloe down the middle of the street, highly visible in the flashing lights, turning it into a public humiliation. Keep moving. This is what happens when you bring your garbage into our town, he shouted, ensuring the neighbors could hear him, keeping the streets safe. Chloe kept her head held high. She didn't look down. She memorized the faces of the onlookers, the exact words Bradley used, the agonizing pressure of the cuffs cutting off her circulation. Let him put on a show, she thought with icy resolve. The curtain call is going to be spectacular. He roughly pushed her into the cramped, hard plastic back seat of the cruiser. She hit her shoulder against the door frame, but bit the inside of her cheek to stay silent. Bradley slammed the door shut, locking her in the cage. Timothy got into the passenger seat, his face pale. He looked at Bradley, then glanced back at Chloe through the metal grating. Brad, the camera is rolling. She didn't actually resist. And we can't tow the car if she's just charged with a misdemeanor. We have to leave it here. Fine, leave the damn car. Bradley spat, shoving the cruiser into gear. But she's going in. She needs to learn respect. I'll write the report so tight a judge will throw the book at her. The drive to the precinct was agonizingly slow. Bradley took every sharp turn and speed bump aggressively, causing Chloe to slide around in the back seat, unable to brace herself, with her hands cuffed behind her back. 10 minutes later, they pulled into the Sally Port of the Oak Creek Police Department. Bradley dragged her out of the car, parading her through the back doors and into the bustling booking room. Desk Sergeant William Higgins, a tired man in his 50s with a thick mustache, looked up from his paperwork. He sighed heavily when he saw Bradley. "What do you have tonight, Jenkins?" Higgins asked, rubbing his temples. "Got a live one, Sarge," Bradley announced proudly, pushing Chloe toward the booking counter. Caught her casing the Pines in a high-end luxury vehicle. Got combative. Refused lawful orders. Resisting. Disorderly. The whole 9 yards. Higgins looked at Chloe. He noticed her calm demeanor, the expensive quality of her shoes, and the sharp, intelligent gaze that was currently sweeping the room, taking in the security cameras, the layout, and the badge numbers of every officer present. "Name?" Higgins asked, pulling a blank booking sheet toward him. "Chloe Davies," she answered clearly. "And I would like it noted on the record that Officer Jenkins has refused to loosen my handcuffs, despite them cutting off my circulation, and that I am formally requesting my phone call," Bradley snorted. "You'll get your call when we're done processing you, sweetheart. Empty your pockets." "My pockets were emptied by your officer during his illegal search," Chloe replied, staring directly at Bradley. "He left my belongings on the hood of my vehicle." Bradley's face faltered for a fraction of a second. In his rage, he had completely forgotten to collect her phone and ID from the hood of the Mercedes. He had abandoned them at the scene. "Is that true, Jenkins?" Higgins asked, his voice dropping into a dangerous low register. "You left the suspect's property unsecured at a scene?" It doesn't matter," Bradley deflected, trying to cover his mistake with bluster. "She's a suspect. Process her, Sarge. Put her in holding cell 3. I need to make a phone call," Chloe repeated. Her tone brooked no argument. "Now." Bradley stepped aggressively toward her. "I told you. You wait until—" "Actually," Higgins interrupted, standing up from his desk. He had been around a long time, and something about this woman's absolute lack of fear was setting off massive alarm bells in his veteran brain. "She gets her call. Now. Jenkins, take the cuffs off. Sarge, she's combative. Take them off, Bradley. Now," Higgins commanded. Reluctantly, muttering under his breath, Bradley unlocked the handcuffs. Chloe brought her arms forward, wincing as blood rushed back into her numb hands. Deep red welts circled her wrists. Higgins pushed a heavy black landline phone across the counter toward her. "Who are you calling, Miss Davies? A lawyer? Family?" Chloe rubbed her wrists, her eyes locking onto Bradley Jenkins, with a gaze that promised absolute devastation. "Neither," Chloe said, dialing a secure, unlisted number from memory. "I'm calling my boss." The heavy black receiver of the precinct's landline phone felt cold against Chloe's ear as the automated routing system clicked through a series of encrypted federal relays. At the booking counter, Desk Sergeant William Higgins watched her closely. Her posture was perfectly rigid, her expression devoid of the typical panic or drunken indignation he saw every Friday night. A few feet away, Officer Bradley Jenkins leaned against a bulletin board, loudly slurping a lukewarm coffee from a styrofoam cup, completely oblivious to the impending storm. "Start writing up the impound request, Timmy," Bradley ordered his rookie partner, a cruel smirk plastered across his face. "I want that luxury SUV dragged to the municipal lot by morning. Let's see how much attitude she has when she's paying $300 a day in storage fees." Timothy hesitated, clutching his clipboard. "Brad, we didn't inventory the car. We didn't even process the scene properly. If her lawyer gets a hold of this..." "I am the law on Whispering Pines," Bradley interrupted, slamming his coffee cup down on a nearby desk. "Write the damn ticket." On the other end of the line, the secure connection stabilized. A gruff, sleep-roughened voice answered. "Mitchell, Director," Chloe spoke, her voice calm, projecting just enough for Higgins to hear her cadence, but keeping the specific words low. "This is Agent Davies. Authorization code Delta Niner 7 Echo. I require immediate extraction and operational intervention." In his home office 30 miles away in downtown Chicago, Special Agent in Charge Robert Mitchell sat bolt upright. He was the head of the FBI's Regional Anti-Corruption Task Force, a man who had spent 3 decades dismantling organized crime syndicates and dirty political machines. The authorization code Chloe used wasn't a standard distress signal. It was a code indicating that a high-level undercover operative had been detained by hostile or unknown local forces while actively holding classified materials or knowledge. "Davies, confirm your status," Mitchell said, his tone instantly shifting from sleep to razor-sharp operational readiness. "Are you injured? Is your cover blown?" "Negative on injuries, though the arresting officer utilized excessive force with restraints," Chloe reported analytically, staring directly at Bradley, who was currently mocking her to another beat cop. "I am currently detained at the Oak Creek Municipal Police Department. The arresting officer is a Bradley Jenkins. He initiated a pretextual traffic stop without probable cause, engaged in blatant racial profiling, bypassed standard procedural safeguards, and bypassed a vehicle search after failing to secure my identification. My federal credentials and sidearm remain secured in the vehicle at the scene. My cover as a civilian auditor remains intact for now." Mitchell swore softly under his breath. Oak Creek. That was the absolute worst possible location. Chloe had been tracing millions of dollars in laundered cartel money flowing through shell companies managed by the Bennett Corporation, a massive real estate development firm heavily intertwined with Oak Creek's local government. For a local cop to pull over the lead federal investigator in that specific neighborhood smelled of catastrophic interference. "Did he ask about the Bennett sites? Did he run your plates through the local dispatch?" Mitchell demanded, his fingers already flying across his laptop keyboard, waking up the regional emergency response team. "He asked if I was moving cash," Chloe replied. "He cited my presence in the neighborhood as suspicious, based entirely on demographic assumptions. I do not believe he knows who I am, but his actions constitute a severe deprivation of civil rights and direct interference with an ongoing federal inquiry. He left my personal phone on the hood of my car on Whispering Pines Drive. He left evidence at an unsecured scene." Mitchell's voice turned icy. "This isn't just a rogue cop, Chloe. This is a monumental liability. Hold your position." Do not answer any interrogations. Do not consent to fingerprinting. I am mobilizing a rapid response unit and calling the United States Attorney's Office. We are coming to tear that precinct apart." "Understood," Chloe said, and gently placed the receiver back onto the cradle. She turned back to Sergeant Higgins. The older desk sergeant had not missed the precise, military-like efficiency of her phone call. His veteran instincts were screaming at him. He pulled his keyboard closer and typed Chloe Davies into the law enforcement agency's data system, cross-referencing her physical description and the address she had provided. He hit the enter key. Usually, the screen populated instantly with driving records, outstanding warrants, and registered vehicles. This time, the screen froze. A spinning blue circle appeared for 5 agonizing seconds. Then, the entire screen flashed a harsh, glaring crimson. A large black box appeared in the center of the monitor. Restricted file. Department of Justice clearance level 5 required. Unauthorized access is a federal offense under 18 U.S.C. Section 1, 1030. Contact the National Crime Information Center immediately. All the blood drained from Higgins' face. He had been a police officer for 28 years. He had run thousands of names. He had never, not once, triggered a Department of Justice Level 5 lockdown. That level of encryption was reserved for federal judges, deep cover operatives, and highly classified government assets. "Jenkins," Higgins croaked, his voice cracking slightly. He cleared his throat and tried again, louder. "Jenkins, get over here, now." Bradley sauntered over, a cocky grin still firmly in place. "What's up, Sarge? You find her rap sheet?" "Let me guess. Aggravated assault? Grand theft auto?" Higgins forcefully grabbed the collar of Bradley's uniform, pulling the much larger man down toward the computer monitor. "Look at the screen, you arrogant fool. Look at it." Bradley squinted at the glowing red warning. "What is this? The system glitching out again? Just bypass it." "You can't bypass a DOJ lockdown, you idiot," Higgins hissed, genuine panic leaking into his voice. "I just ran her name, and the federal government effectively told me that if I hit another key, I'm committing a felony." "Who did you arrest, Bradley? What exactly did you do out there?" "I told you." She drifted over the center line. "She was giving me attitude." "It's a routine collar," Bradley protested, but a tiny seed of doubt finally began to take root in his mind. He looked over at Chloe. She was sitting peacefully on the wooden bench against the wall, her hands resting calmly in her lap, watching them with the terrifying patience of a predator waiting for a trap to spring. "A routine collar doesn't trigger a federal firewall," Higgins snapped. He immediately picked up his radio microphone. "Dispatch, this is Desk Sergeant Higgins. Get Captain Miller on the phone. Wake him up if you have to. Tell him we have a code red situation in the booking room, and I need him down here 5 minutes ago." Timothy Collins stepped up to the desk, his face pale, clutching his unfinished report. "Sarge, I told him we didn't have probable cause. I told him the dash cam was rolling. He just wouldn't listen." "Shut your mouth, Collins," Bradley roared, pointing a thick finger at the rookie. "Don't you dare turn coward on me. We did everything by the book." "Nothing about this is by the book," Higgins yelled back, the precinct falling dead silent as the officers realized the severity of the situation. "You brought a suspect in without reading her Miranda rights on camera. You left her personal property on a public street, and now the DOJ has flagged her file. You didn't catch a criminal, Jenkins. You stepped on a landmine." Before Bradley could formulate a defense, the heavy, reinforced glass doors of the precinct's front entrance violently hissed open. The quiet, mundane atmosphere of the Oak Creek Police Department shattered entirely. 5 men and 2 women strode into the lobby, moving with a synchronized, overwhelming purpose that instantly dominated the room. They did not wear police uniforms. They wore tailored dark suits, Kevlar vests, bearing the bold yellow letters, FBI, and expressions of absolute, unyielding authority. Leading the pack was Special Agent in Charge, Robert Mitchell. He was a tall, imposing man with silver hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. He bypassed the civilian waiting area entirely, marching straight up to the reinforced glass, separating the lobby from the booking room. "Open this door," Mitchell commanded. It wasn't a request. The sheer force of his voice made the bulletproof glass seem incredibly fragile. Higgins fumbled for the electronic buzzer, his hands shaking. The heavy door clicked open. The federal agents swarmed the room. 2 agents immediately moved to secure all exits. Another agent, a tech specialist, walked directly to Higgins' computer terminal, flashed a federal warrant, and physically unplugged the hard drive tower, securing it in a specialized evidence bag. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Bradley shouted, stepping forward, his hand instinctively dropping toward his duty belt. In less than a second, 3 federal agents drew their sidearms, aiming directly at Bradley's chest. "Take your hand off your weapon, officer. Do it right now, or you will be neutralized," a female agent ordered, her voice completely devoid of emotion. Bradley froze, his eyes wide with sudden, suffocating terror. He slowly raised his hands, stepping back. The crushing reality of the situation finally obliterated his arrogance. This wasn't a disciplinary hearing. This was an invasion. Mitchell walked past Bradley without giving him a second glance. He approached the wooden bench where Chloe was seated. The severity in his eyes softened slightly. "Agent Davies," Mitchell said, his voice carrying clearly across the silent, stunned room. "Are you injured?" "I am perfectly fine, sir," Chloe replied, standing up smoothly. "However, my wrists have sustained minor bruising due to improper restraint application." The revelation dropped like a bomb in the booking room. Higgins slumped back into his chair, rubbing his face with both hands. Timothy Collins looked like he was about to vomit. Bradley Jenkins stared at Chloe, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. "Agent? You're a Fed?" Mitchell slowly turned to face Bradley. The federal director's face was a mask of calculated fury. "You must be Officer Jenkins. You have had an incredibly busy evening. In the span of 45 minutes, you have managed to violate the Fourth Amendment, engage in false imprisonment, and severely obstruct a highly classified, multi-agency federal investigation." I didn't know," Bradley stammered, his voice jumping an octave. The confident, sneering bully was completely gone, replaced by a terrified man realizing his life was over. "She didn't identify herself. She just handed me a driver's license. She didn't say anything." An undercover operative is not required to break their cover to satisfy the fragile ego of a beat cop who decides to play tyrant on a midnight shift, Chloe stated, her voice slicing through the tension like a scalpel. She walked over to Mitchell. "He stated on his dashcam audio that he pulled me over because I, quote, did not fit the local demographic. He admitted he had no moving violation to justify the stop until he fabricated a lane departure." "That's a lie," Bradley yelled desperately, looking around for an ally. "Collins! Tell them she was drifting." Timothy Collins stood rigid, his eyes locked straight ahead. He swallowed hard. The rookie knew exactly where his duty lay, and it wasn't with his corrupt training officer. "Sir," Timothy spoke up, addressing Mitchell directly. Officer Jenkins explicitly stated he was initiating the stop based on the driver's appearance and the value of the vehicle. There was no lane departure. The dashcam footage will corroborate this. Bradley let out a wounded sound, stepping toward his partner. "You little rat! Stand down, Jenkins!" A new voice boomed from the back hallway. Captain David Miller, the commander of the Oak Creek precinct, burst into the room. He was still buttoning his uniform shirt, having rushed directly from his home. He took one look at the FBI agents, the seized computer, and the terrified face of his worst patrol officer, and instantly understood the catastrophe. "Director Mitchell," Captain Miller said, extending a hand that was politely but firmly ignored. "I apologize for whatever has happened here. We will handle Officer Jenkins internally. He will be suspended, pending a full internal affairs review." "Captain Miller," Mitchell replied coldly, "you misunderstand the situation. You are not handling anything. This precinct is no longer conducting an internal review. You are now the subject of a federal civil rights probe. Mitchell signaled to one of his agents. The agent stepped forward, pulling a pair of heavy, federal-issue handcuffs from his belt. "Bradley Jenkins," Mitchell pronounced, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "You are under arrest by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You are being charged under Title 18, United States Code, Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Furthermore, due to your interference in an active financial crimes task force monitoring the Bennett Corporation, you are being charged with obstruction of justice." Bradley's knees literally buckled. He sagged against the wall, his chest heaving. "The Bennett Corporation? I don't know anything about that. I just pull people over. I'm just a patrol cop. We will see what the federal prosecutor thinks about that," Mitchell said. "Especially considering your sudden influx of cash deposits over the last 6 months, matching the exact timelines of the Bennett construction permits in this district." The final twist hit Bradley like a physical blow. The FBI hadn't just come because he arrested one of their own. They already had a file on him. His petty, localized corruption had accidentally intersected with a massive federal dragnet, and his own racist arrogance had pulled the trigger on the trap. He had served himself up on a silver platter. The federal agent grabbed Bradley's arms, pulling them behind his back. The familiar, terrifying click of cold steel, ratcheting around his wrists, echoed through the room. The handcuffs were tight. They pinched his skin. They cut off his circulation. It was the exact same agonizing pressure he had inflicted on Chloe just an hour prior. Hard, unforgiving karma had arrived. Wearing a Kevlar vest, Chloe watched as the man who had humiliated her in the street was stripped of his badge, his gun, and his freedom in front of his entire department. She felt no joy, only a profound, clinical satisfaction. Justice was not always swift, but tonight it was absolute. "Let's go, Agent Davies," Mitchell said, turning toward the door. "We have a secure team recovering your vehicle and credentials from the scene. You have a lot of paperwork to fill out before sunrise." Chloe nodded, walking out of the booking room without looking back. Behind her, the wailing protests of a broken, ruined man faded behind the heavy, reinforced glass doors. 3 months later, the imposing mahogany doors of courtroom 1419, inside the Dirksen Federal Courthouse in downtown Chicago, swung shut, sealing Bradley Jenkins's fate. The arrogant swagger that had defined his 12 years on the Oak Creek police force had entirely evaporated. In its place stood a hollow, trembling man, clad in the bright orange jumpsuit of the Metropolitan Correctional Center. His wrists and ankles were bound by heavy chains, shuffling loudly against the polished marble floor. The trial had been a media spectacle, drawing intense public scrutiny. What started as a viral story of a racist traffic stop had unraveled into a massive federal indictment. The dashcam footage from that cold November night had been leaked to the press, played on every major news network across the country. The world watched as Bradley relentlessly humiliated Special Agent Chloe Davies, his own words exposing his deep-seated prejudice and abuse of power. The public outcry was deafening, demanding immediate accountability, but the public humiliation was merely the first layer of his ruin. The Federal Anti-Corruption Task Force, led by Director Robert Mitchell, had ruthlessly exploited the opening Bradley unwittingly provided. By illegally detaining Chloe and interfering with her active surveillance, Bradley had drawn the full weight of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division directly onto his own life. Forensic accountants from the private intelligence firm Kroll were brought in to trace the dark money. They uncovered a complex web of bribery, linking Bradley directly to the Bennett Corporation. For years, Bradley had been accepting substantial cash payouts in exchange for turning a blind eye to illegal dumping, union busting, and zoning violations at Bennett construction sites in his patrol sector. His petty greed had left a glaring paper trail. Timothy Collins, the rookie partner Bradley had mercilessly bullied, became the prosecution's star witness. Timothy took the stand, and systematically dismantled Bradley's defense, detailing months of racial profiling, falsified police reports, and petty extortion. The rookie's testimony was the final nail in the coffin, a brutal stroke of karma delivered by the very subordinate Bradley had tried to corrupt in silence. Sitting at the prosecution table, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, Chloe watched the proceedings with cold, professional detachment. She had completed her audit of the Bennett Corporation, leading to the arrest of 3 local politicians and a dozen corporate executives. Bradley Jenkins was just a small, dirty cog in a massive machine, but his downfall was perhaps the most satisfying. He had traded his integrity for a few $1,000s and a fleeting sense of superiority. Judge Thomas Fitzgerald adjusted his glasses, looking down from the bench with absolute disgust. The courtroom fell dead silent, anticipating the final blow. "Mr. Jenkins," the judge's voice boomed through the room. "You were entrusted with a badge and a gun to protect your community. Instead, you weaponized your authority to terrorize innocent citizens based on your own pathetic prejudices. You operated under the delusion that your uniform made you a king on the streets of Oak Creek. You thought you could humiliate a woman in the dead of night simply because she did not fit your narrow, bigoted worldview." Bradley stared at the floor, tears leaking from his bloodshot eyes, dripping onto his shackled hands. His wife had filed for divorce the day after his arrest, taking their house and full custody of their children. His police union, desperate to salvage their public image, had completely abandoned him, refusing to cover his exorbitant legal fees. The department had terminated him immediately, stripping him of his pension. He was completely alone, bankrupted by high-priced defense attorneys who had ultimately failed to save him from federal wrath. "When you illegally arrested Special Agent Davies," the judge continued, his tone turning to ice, "you did not just violate her civil rights. You obstructed a vital federal investigation, and you exposed your own profound, systemic corruption. It is a terrifying reality that predators like you hide behind the shield of law enforcement, poisoning the public trust." The judge picked up his heavy wooden gavel. "For the charges of deprivation of rights under color of law, obstruction of justice, and federal bribery, I sentence you to 15 years in a maximum security federal penitentiary without the possibility of early parole." The gavel slammed down with the finality of a gunshot. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. 15 years. As a disgraced former cop in a federal prison, Bradley would spend every single day of those 15 years looking over his shoulder, stripped of all power, living in the exact state of fear and vulnerability he had so eagerly inflicted on others. Federal marshals grabbed Bradley by the arms, hauling him away as he began to sob uncontrollably, his cries echoing down the corridor. Chloe did not smile. She simply closed her leather notebook, stood up smoothly, and walked out of the courtroom. The street outside was bright and loud, a stark contrast to the dark, quiet road where she had been pulled over months ago. She hailed a taxi, her mind already shifting to her next assignment. The trap was empty. The predator was permanently caged, and justice, harsh and unforgiving, had finally balanced the scales. Bradley's arrogance destroyed his life, transforming him from a corrupt officer into a terrified prisoner. Chloe's quiet resilience exposed a massive criminal network, proving that prejudice often masks deeper guilt. True justice is rarely swift, but when karma finally arrives, it strikes with devastating precision. The silver badge could not protect a man from his own hatred, leaving him to face the dark reality of his irreversible choices behind bars.